This isn't a twist off?
No, sir.
How do you not buy twist offs, bro?
Hey, man. You know, I brought a gift.
You did.
I didn't see what's his
for me
name.
because I'm not cool like you.
Well, you know, you gotta get a Hawaiian t-shirt.
There you go. I have one. Do I need to go get it?
That would be great. Look at that. Deft hands.
Damn.
All right. Cheers.
This is the William Horton podcast featuring Caleb Taylor, and this is episode 7, The Responsibility of Freedom. Welcome on to the podcast, Caleb. If you would, be sure to give the listeners a little bit of a description about yourself, like what you're doing today, what your plans are, stuff like that. We'll get in further detail. Just give them a good general description.
Well, so far, I've been an EMT. That was my very first job. And I started when I was about 19. Did that for about 2.5 years. Then I moved on to the Navy. Did that for 4 years. Just did my one enlistment. After that, I did a stint in corrections. Very small stint. Not a great job. Don't do corrections. Terrible. After that, I did some private security work. Just work for a hospital, basically.
And that was security. The only place that you did security?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was a great job. Love that. And then now I'm moving into law enforcement. So.
Okay. I mean, 19 years old, you decide to be EMT. What made you decide to be EMT?
I watched a lot of House, so the medical field.
I'm not good, huh? Really?
Yeah,
seriously, that was
House.
Innocence?
Yeah, I loved House. I've always been interested in the medical side of things. It's very cut and dry, you know.
It stays pretty stable. You're pretty much going to be fighting the same thing. The
and I like that
principles remain the same. So whenever you were going in to be an EMT, what did it take? Like, is there any education class that you have to attend?
So I did I want to say it was a 4-week boot camp, basically, up in Crowley, Texas, from training division. We did tests, practicals, which is like they would bring out dummies. You have to do CPR, you have to do control the bleed, the basic stuff, and then you learn a whole lot of knowledge book-wise. Okay. And then you take the NREMT test, which is a very difficult test. I think I failed the first time, and then I finally passed it the second time. And I wasn't really studying.
You were 19.
Well, yeah, but
any 19-year-old really just like, I'm gonna study? No, we kind of just.
I don't know. You see those kids who just like have that laser focus, and you're like you compare yourself to them. It's like, I'm not that. Yeah. But
I think we just see that mostly in the movies, man. There is some people that are really like that. I think Zach. Really kind of like...
Oh, he's so smart, dude.
Yeah, he's a very intelligent guy, and once he sets his mind to something, he can really put it together.
Yeah, you do your little boot camp, and it'll vary depending on the course. Mine was pretty quickly done. I want to say it was 4 weeks. Took the NREMT test, did my clinicals at, I believe it was St. Elizabeth in Beaumont, or Baptist in Beaumont, one of the two. That was an experience. Got to work with the nurses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, awesome people, man. Dark. That's one thing I'm gonna kind of put a disclaimer out. I have a very dark sense of humor, and I hope it doesn't offend anybody, but it's probably gonna.
That's okay.
You're seeing stuff come into this hospital that people like. You're experiencing every day what people only experience once in their lifetime most of the time.
Yeah.
The tragedy of that person's life happens maybe once or twice every decade. You know. Yeah. And you're seeing it all. And that's hard to deal with when you're a sensitive or empathic person. And I was when I was younger, probably still am. But, we saw like aborted babies that weren't supposed to be aborted. They came out. I had this one lady who aborted her baby into the toilet. I don't think it was intentional, but she had a miscarriage, basically.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, and so you're seeing this little fetus. And if I'm getting too dark, please let me know.
Okay. I was actually going to ask this question. You're kind of just addressing it. So
yeah, all the trauma's just pouring out.
It's okay. No, well, I mean, you come on here, you talk. There's some people. Okay, let's look at it like this. There's some people that are going to watch this podcast that are going into the medical field, and really don't know what they're getting themselves into.
I would say if you are a compassionate person, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot. But there's beauty in it. There's beauty in the pain because you get to be there on somebody's darkest day. And it's going to tear you up, but that's the price you pay for getting to do something good. If you could do something good and you didn't have to suffer for it, it really wouldn't be a good thing because you're just doing what's beneficial. Does that make sense?
I think it would just be a common act at that point.
Yeah.
Honestly. There would be no... Really, it's a human scale. It's something that we came up with, like the good or bad. Wouldn't be on our scale of good, though. So it would just be common. It would be an
yeah,
everyday thing. We recently went through all this with my grandpa. He had to go to rehabilitation at Baptist. And Baptist really does get like a bad name for certain areas.
Yeah.
But we got to deal with the rehabilitation area, and I was terrified. My dad, whenever I was younger, he ended up having a motorcycle accident. He had to go to all kinds of nursing homes and stuff. He didn't have good health care.
Yeah.
So he got put in some pretty crappy
situations.
Yeah. It got dark, like
Yeah.
you're talking about. It's that kind of dark. He got
Hospitals are terrifying, man.
Dude.
Like rehabilitation centers, you're seeing broken people.
Yeah. Can you imagine like being there for somebody who has nobody?
Yeah.
That's terrible. That's one of the scariest things to think about, is thinking about getting old and not having anybody
you put
show up
yourself
for
in
you.
that person's shoes, and you're like, this could be me one day.
Potentially, yeah.
That's
so treat people good.
Take the time to build relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was dark, and it's a lot for a young kid to see. I'm pretty hard on myself because I'm like, you should be able to deal with this. It was pretty hard to deal with. You're seeing all sorts of crazy things, and you don't want to be weak. As a man, you don't want to be weak, and so you bottle all that crap in, and that's what tears you up. You gotta have somebody you talk to. Please talk to someone. It doesn't matter how crazy or demented it sounds. It's what you're experiencing. Chances are somebody else is experiencing it, and they're too afraid to talk about it. Everybody has something that they're afraid to talk about.
Really, honestly, this podcast is a place where toxic masculinity comes to die. I don't want toxic masculinity. I want it to be acknowledged that the fact that a man can still be masculine and have feelings.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of guys I agree with, like on podcasts out there, the bigger podcasts, that always torch the concept of toxic masculinity. Mm-hmm. I think it's a real thing. It's for sure a real thing.
For sure.
You
lived in Kirbyville, dude.
Yeah.
This place is... Okay, I'm not going to just roast Kirbyville because there are some really good people here.
No, let's burn it.
Just small towns.
Yeah.
Small towns, and this is what I harp on, is typically stuff about small towns. The last podcast is actually the first podcast I've said something good about a small town.
Yeah.
And it was being around your family members and the people that have known them for years and years. It takes a village to raise a child kind of thing. I didn't say exactly it takes a village to raise a child. You're a little part of the community.
Even the bad people raise the child in one way or another.
Yes.
For better or
worse. I
worse.
think that's one thing that everybody overlooks.
Yeah.
And that's terrible.
It is, but again, it comes down to the child's mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a big argument over, nature versus nurture in psychology, and like free will versus like determinism, which is basically like you are who you are because of your, your genetic factors, how you were raised, all this, and there's nothing you can do to change it.
A product of your environment.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And I do believe that's true to a certain degree, but I think we have this kind of like ace in the hole with mindset and how we choose to perceive things. Free will is in us.
So I'm not going to go into too much detail about this, but I mean, you're a closer friend, and eventually at some point I wanted to talk about it on the podcast anyways. Where I come from is Kirbyville. I moved all over the place. My parents, they were on and off early.
Yeah.
Me and my mom were in the bottom of the hole so bad one time. My dad left us in such a bad predicament. We were squatting in houses. It wasn't ours. And then you're moving. It became normal to me, seeing new places. We always ended up back at my grandparents' house.
Yeah.
But I met so many different people along the way. By the time I got to high school, I didn't know who I was. I'm going to do the biker thing.
You're going to do whatever gets you love and approval.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what that was, and love and approval never came with that.
Or at least protection from outside.
It was,
like,
I didn't have to focus on everything that was happening around me.
Yeah.
I could set my mind to something and be like, I'm going to do this
you.
for a while.
Okay.
Yeah. With the music, it was, I can really just sit down and say whatever I want to say.
That you can't say to other people.
That I can't say it to other people, but I can be like, oh, no, it's not serious. It's just a song.
Yeah. And especially in this, not this town, but small towns, small southern towns, probably everywhere, you are encouraged not to speak about that stuff.
Oh, mental health?
Yeah.
Dude, it is so...
chin up and do this. And meanwhile, he's an alcoholic.
Grow a pair.
Go to work. Be an alcoholic like a real man.
Oh, my God.
I say that as we drink whiskey, but everything in moderation.
So, as you've seen from the last podcast, you know that I have a very strong mindset about not being like everybody else in
I love that.
Our small town. You're supposed to learn from history. not try to relapse. You're supposed to move forward. You're supposed to move forward. You're supposed to keep going. You're supposed to better yourself. My dad was not the best of people. He definitely had his vices, but he never wanted me to be like him. He never wanted me to be like the next man. He wanted me to be myself. He wanted me to move forward. He wanted me to prevail. He wanted me to seek out my dreams.
This
and do
is
my own thing.
This is one thing that this is something I see in my dad as well, and something I grapple with. You're having a kid. You're bringing another life into the world, and if you don't have your stuff together, why are you doing that?
Oh, man.
Because people have kids as an escape.
Yeah.
Oh, this will be my thing that makes me happy. Okay, well, think about your kid. When they're coming out, they don't have a kid. They're going to have to go into the same life that you went through, and you're going to be teaching them.
Or worse. It can get worse because you have to look at the financial standpoint too. Maybe now for us, I'm going to say this: that our generation financially, it's way freaking harder.
Oh yeah,
there is no stability. Everything's always going up.
And I hate to complain about anything because I do believe that pull yourself up by the bootstraps mentality is a good mentality to have. Objectively, the jobs are getting paid less, a whole bunch of other factors that are just really not working out for us.
Yeah, no. My point was, as I believe in the same thing,
Yeah.
pulling yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yeah.
I just think we have to work a lot harder to pull ourselves up. I think our financials are a lot heavier.
Yeah.
That's a better way to put it.
I think you have to, there's always this split. You have one generation saying, the older generation saying, you need to be able to do this, and this. You're mentally weak. And then you have the newer generation bringing up all these other statistics about why it's harder for them. Neither one of them is wrong, and neither one of them is right alone. You have to acknowledge the situation and then be like, but this is a good mentality to have for it. So let's address the problems with this mentality. How about that?
That would be a lot better, but it doesn't usually work out that way.
No, because people like to grab ideas in clusters.
Yes.
If that makes sense. Like, they don't take the time to cherry pick. Oh, this is a good idea. Oh, that's a bad idea. Just throw that away. And the way I like to say it, which is this is a little edgy, but if Hitler told you to drink 8 glasses of water a day and exercise 30 minutes 3 times a week, is that a bad idea because it came from Hitler? You gotta pick out the good things even from a person who has a bunch of bad ideas.
Actually, that's a really good point of view.
I do believe God has a plan for each of us if we act in accordance to who we really are.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's ugly. You don't do anything worthwhile. You don't find anything that's truly beautiful unless you address the ugly parts of yourself.
Oh, most definitely. You can't fix it. You want to know what Bo said to me whenever I brought him on the podcast?
What's that?
This is a little, I guess you can call this a blooper from last episode, but he was like, yeah, we can do the video call and stuff. Well, last week was like one of the worst storms we've had because we've been in like a D4 drought. I got everything packed up. I started heading his way. He's like, bro, you don't have to come this way. We were supposed to do it over video call. He was like, you don't have to head this way. The storm's coming, this and that. And I was like, no, bro, I'm already packed up. I'm on the way. You have information.
You're going to help me out or what?
And we were going to do the podcast.
Oh, shit.
So I packed up the desktop, the monitor, everything. Headed that way.
Man, that's the one thing that aggravates people and that I love about you. You're very, very passionate about what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
Regardless of what anybody else thinks.
So the mindset with that is a lot of people hate people like Andrew Tate, David Goggins, and people hate Sam Sulek. Them, in general, David Goggins, Andrew Tate, Sam Sulek, you want to know the one thing that they proceed to do, even though people don't like them?
What?
What they want.
Yeah.
You see how successful some of these people are?
So that ties back into the toxic masculinity kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because people say, a man is X, a man is Y. A man is somebody who does what he wants to do.
Yeah.
A good man does what he wants to do and what he needs to do.
Yes.
You kind of add layers to it. Because there's a balance between doing what you want to do, caring about other people, and doing what's beneficial for them.
There's a balance between doing what you want to do and just being straight out selfish.
Yeah.
So
the people in jails are doing what they want to do,
Oh, yeah, they're doing... I mean, they get 3 hots and a cot, bro.
Yeah, man,
no
they
taxes,
got a good
no
gig,
nothing.
Man.
And I've had plenty of family members in there that I have the right to talk about that. Like, you cannot be mad at me for talking about that. So, all around, you would definitely say that being an EMT changed your perspective on the value of life.
100%. You see some stuff, you'll never be the same no matter how much you try to forget it or you try to push it in the back of your mind. It's changed you. And it's a burden. And you get to decide whether that burden is something that makes you stronger or something that weighs you down.
Obviously, at 19 years old, your first career, you automatically jumped in and started helping people. It's a passion of yours.
It was a passion, and it also felt like a duty.
Mm-hmm.
Like I owed it to people because I had a great childhood.
Yeah.
And that's really, like, that's a big part of my mindset was I was raised by two loving parents in a well-off household. Early on, like, my mother was very doting over me. You know, she treated me like every mother should treat their kid. She did her best.
What
like,
people
genuinely.
describe as
Yeah.
a good mother.
Yeah, her parents were very strict, and she did the exact opposite.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of leeway, but she also talked to me like I was an adult. So I kind of developed a very, I guess you would call it mature mentality early on. I was very self-aware at a young age, and I was like, oh, I'm getting spoiled. This is what happens to kids who are treated like this. They become selfish, self-centered, and of course that is in me for sure. But I felt like I owed it to myself and others to kind of go against the grain with that. And that's why I got into EMS, because I was like, okay, I'm going to be dealing with dead bodies. I'm going to be seeing the bad parts of life, and maybe that'll balance out all this good I've experienced, you know? I don't know if that sounds masochistic or not.
That's like, if you look back at it, you were 19 years old. Yeah. That is the mindset of a 19-year-old going into the EMT field.
Right.
I hate to say it like this, because even though, like, you proceed to say, like, you know, I kind of came out a little bit pampered, you're not very stuck up. Somebody like me would call, usually somebody in your shoes, we would call them stuck up. You're not stuck up. You're very open-minded. You're very passionate about the things that you do.
This is one thing I have trouble with, because that boils back down to the nature versus nurture thing. I never feel like I'm really a good person because I had it so good.
So being an EMT, did it give you any advantages whenever you joined the Navy?
Yeah, that was an interesting question. I read that earlier, and yeah, for sure. I would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30, and go to work at 5:30 in the morning. So just the basic schedule, you know, waking up early and doing this and that, it helped me with that. Being through some garbage will help you with future garbage, you know, of a lesser level.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you had kids breaking down in boot camp. They're like, this is the hardest stuff I've ever done. I'm like, dude, we're folding clothes. And we're getting yelled at. We're getting yelled at by guys whose job it is to yell at us. It's like, you know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Why are you surprised? You know, you get this guys, I'm going to punch a drill instructor. It's like, that's his job. You didn't know that coming in? It's like going to McDonald's and being upset when they serve you a Big Mac.
They never punch the drill instructor anyways. They're not about the talk.
No, sir. Never. Very rarely. I was going to go join the Army with Jonathan Lane. They ended up sending me to the Navy recruiter. I took the ASVAB test and like, no, you're too smart for the Army.
Oh my God.
They sent me to that. Don't do nuclear engineering if you're out there. It's hard. The Air Force actually has an obstacle course in their boot camp. We had no obstacle course. We ran occasionally. We did some push-ups, and we folded clothes all day long. That was it.
So guys, what Caleb is saying, if you're going to join any branch, join the Navy.
Yeah, if you just want to fold clothes all day.
That was boot camp?
That was it, man.
Oh,
it was so disappointing. There was one cool thing at the end of Navy boot camp. It was actually really cool. I don't know if I can talk about it. They tell you not to talk about it. And if you're a Navy guy, you know what